We'll begin in 1 minute.
Good evening. I'd like to call to order June 16th, 2025 council meeting. Everyone who can, please rise for the playing of the national anthem. Niagara Region and Grimsby are situated on treaty land. This land is steeped in the rich history of the First Nations, such as the Hattawindaronk, the Haudenosaunee, and the Anishinaabe, including the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation. There are many First Nations, Métis, and Inuit people from across Turtle Island that live and work in Niagara today. The Regional Municipality of Niagara and the Town of Grimsby stand with all Indigenous people, past and present, in promoting the wise stewardship of the lands on which we live. Are there any disclosures of pecuniary or non-pecuniary interest? Seeing none, prior to approving the agenda, I would like to propose lifting report DPW 25-12 for consideration immediately following the presentation from SLBC. Can I have a mover and seconder to approve the agenda? Moved by Councillor Bradsey.
Mayor Jordan, I'd like to request the removal of one item from the agenda.
All right.
The notice of motion regarding councillor conduct. I think that it is inappropriate in this manner, and there are town procedures to go about this both informally and formally.
All right. I guess council can vote on that.
Sorry, Mayor Jordan. Point of order on the procedure, because I believe that this is a standard notice of motion, so would like to go ahead with it. Just as the notice of motion for me was also went through the same format. Thank you.
Just a clarification, should this not be dealt with an informal complaint rather than a notice of motion?
Yeah, I think we'll call the vote on this. Given the fact that we had a notice of motion much like this late last year or early this year, I can't remember exactly when, the clerk and I decided to let it stand and then deal with it immediately. So we can vote. vote to remove. The agenda item, yes. All right, why doesn't everyone vote on eScribe? Yes, to let the motion stand.
The agenda be amended to remove item.
All right, yeah.
We shouldn't.
Yeah, if it's removed tonight, then it can't come back. So I think we should vote on it in the order of transparency. The clerk and I made a decision to let it stand. We stand by that decision, but Councilor Bradsy's asked it to be deleted, so how's that worded exactly? It's up there?
Can you see that?
All right, so I'll read that. Resolved that the June 16th, 2025 council meeting agenda be amended to remove item 16.2 from the agenda.
It's a majority vote, just so you know.
It's a majority vote. All right, that's defeated.
So we're just back to the original.
So we move back to the original agenda. Can I have a mover and seconder to approve? Moved by Councillor Korstanji, second by Councillor Sharwa. Moved by Councillor Korstanji, second by Councillor Sharwa. Resolved that the June 16, 2025 council meeting agenda be approved approved. All in favor? And that's carried. Tonight we have Donna Harrington, the town's accessibility consultant, presenting recipients with the Accessibility Matters Here Award. Donna, please come to the podium. Thank you.
Hi there, my name's Lisa Peso. I'm here on behalf of Donna
I
Harrington.
didn't think it was Donna.
I'm not Donna Harrington, but nonetheless, a pleasure to be here. Thank you for having us. I am the Grimsby representative on the Joint Accessibility Advisory Committee and pleased with your support in promotion to present the award winners for this year's Accessibility Matters Here campaign. There are two Grimsby recipients of this award, one being the town of Grimsby, with thanks again for in the space of built environment and implementation of the AODA standards, and the second being the Grimsby location of Sobeys, again in the space of built environment, and for some of the work they're doing in the sensory space to promote neurodivergent shoppers' accessibility needs. And so we're pleased to present those awards and grateful to be here.
Great, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Can I have a mover and seconder to receive the presentation? Moved by Councillor DeFlavio, second by Councillor Howe. All right. Moved by Councillor DeFlavio, second by Councillor Howe. Resolved that the presentation from Lisa Bezo be received. All in favor? And that's carried. Next, we have our representatives from SLBC speaking about asset management plan. We will hold questions until the staff report is on the floor for discussion. Please come to the podium.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. Thanks for having me here. I'm Thomas Suda from SLBC, and I'll be presenting the 2025 Asset Management Plan that was developed in collaboration with town staff. Next slide, please. So for the agenda, I'll just give a quick brief intro on what is asset management, then get into the requirements required by the Ontario regulation for AM plans, then talk about the key outcomes of the asset management plan through each chapter, and then at the end talk about what endorsement today means for the asset management plan and next steps. And I'd be happy to answer any questions we have at the end. Next step. So what is asset management? Asset management, really a lot of us are doing that in our daily lives. So for a homeowner, you have to do maintenance, so servicing your furnace. You have to think about renewal, such as reshingling your roof or replacing windows, and perhaps even upgrading some of your assets, like putting in a more energy efficient HVAC system. So what a homeowner has to do over its life of a house is to think about doing these activities at the right time to basically minimize your overall life cycle cost of ownership while you're still maintaining your house in good condition, which is your service level, and you're managing risks throughout that time, such as fixing a leaking roof that you're fixing before it becomes a bigger or more expensive problem. So asset management for the town is really applying these same principles of cost, service levels, and risk to town assets like roads, bridges, facilities, which is like a house, water mains and parks, and so on. Next slide, please. So the Ontario Regulation 58817 requires each municipality in Ontario to complete an asset management plan for proposed levels of service by July of this year. The proposed levels of service asset management plan has to include what levels of service that the town proposes to provide over the next 10 years and explain why those service levels are appropriate for the town. The AM plan also has to stipulate what the activities are and the cost of those activities to meet your proposed service levels, and if there's a funding gap, to explain how the town will manage that funding gap. As part of this project, we also updated the asset management policy, which is required to be reviewed and updated every 5 years as well per the regulation. Next slide, please. So I'll start with the key asset management plan outcomes. One is that it's an iterative plan. So we did build on previous AM plans that were done in 2022 by the town as well as 2024. Those previous asset management plans were focused on existing or current service levels. The new requirement this year and in this asset management plan that we're presenting today is focused on proposed service levels and what the town is proposing as that service level for the next 10 years. The second outcome is that the average town asset is in good condition. So almost 92% of the town's portfolio is in fair or better condition, but that doesn't mean that you don't need to continue to invest in your assets to maintain and meet your proposed service levels. In terms of funding gaps, there's funding gaps for growth and upgrade of $1.2 million a year for growth, which is new construction and building new assets to meet population demands, and then $0.3 million a year gap for upgrade projects. For renewal, which is a traditional state of good repair and condition of your existing assets, there's a larger gap of $4.3 million a year. Next slide, please. So the AM plan needs to report the overall value of your assets per the regulation. The estimated value of town assets is $1.2 billion in current year dollar value. You can see here the spread across the different asset areas. A lot of your value is under transportation, stormwater, water, wastewater assets, as well as parks and facilities. But the total there is, $1.2 billion. Next slide, please. In the state of infrastructure chapter, in addition to the value of the facilities, we talk about what condition your assets are in. So this is just looking deeper at that 92% of assets in fair or better condition by value. It's kind of in that pie chart there. Dark green is very good, lighter green is good, yellow is fair, orange is poor, red is very poor. So most of your assets, 90+%, are in the yellow-green colors. There is a portion of assets in gray, if you look at the detailed bar charts on the right, that represents unknown condition where we couldn't estimate condition. Most of that's related to natural infrastructure, so assets like wetlands, forested areas. That's typical across many municipalities where those assets aren't inspected with an observed condition rating, and obviously age is not really applicable to those assets to estimate a condition based on age. So that's kind of the gray area that's labeled as unknown condition. And just to note about the assets that are in orange and red, that represents about 8.4% of your assets by value. And I'll talk a bit about that later on as well. Next slide, please. So in terms of levels of service, this basically means your assets need to provide a certain performance so that the town can still provide services to the community, because your assets are supporting all these services that you're providing. And we typically think of levels of service in terms of 3 categories to make them easier to digest. One of them, the first is capacity. So that really looks at service levels related to meeting population demand increases and the risk of, as your population increases, the need to grow your asset base and add new assets. So for example, in the asset management plan, we're tracking the number of kilometers of urban destination trails, and that's tied to the recent recreations master plan that was developed. Functional service levels have to do with upgrading your existing assets. So we look at things like energy performance, and accessibility of your facilities. So looking to improve your facilities by making them more accessible, removing barriers, and making them more energy efficient. The quality and reliability measures relate to the traditional state of good repair or condition-based measures of your assets. So looking at what condition they're in, and that informs the need to renew or do additional operations and maintenance. And I'll focus more on the pavement condition index on the next slide. So the Pavement Condition Index, or PCI, is basically a condition rating for roads out of 100. So if you have a PCI of 80, for example, that's a very good road. It has no visible cracks or structural issues. If you have a PCI of, say, 40, that would be a poor road. So that has deterioration, random cracks, rutting, and surface defects on about 50% of the surface. And you could see some representative photos there on the condition of each of those different condition categories. So that's Pavement Condition Index. Next slide, please. So looking at Pavement Condition Index as a service level, basically if you focus on the left-hand part of the slide first, the PCI right now is 77.4, which means the average road has an average score of 77.4, which is very good. So the average road is very good in the town. What we're projecting is that PCI will decrease and decline to 63.9. By the end of the next 10 years, based on what we've detailed in analysis as there's about 1.5 million a year available to do capital renewal on your roads right now. So with that funding that's available, the performance is going to decrease. On the right-hand side is what we're proposing. So in the AM plan, we're proposing that the PCI be maintained above 70, which is the 70.3 there by the end of the 10-year period. To reach that proposed service level, you would need $2.8 million a year. So that represents a funding gap between what you have available now of 1.5 to what you need to meet your proposed service level is the $2.8 million a year. So the gap is $1.3 million a year for road renewal. So this is where we try to balance what's appropriate for the town. We could have also looked at, and we did look at a scenario where you have to maintain your current PCI at 77. Obviously that costs a lot more money. And that's not required to still maintain your assets in a state of good repair. So what we're doing is allowing you to spend a bit less, allowing your roads to deteriorate a bit to 70. That's still good practice for engineering management of roads. But it's looking at those different service levels to come up with what's appropriate for the town given your current situation, as well as how much money you have available right now. You can see here that $2.8 million a year translates into a 1.2% annual reinvestment rate. That's the investment rate compared to the value of your portfolio. If you look at benchmarking and industry standards, the Canadian Infrastructure Report Card there at the bottom recommends spending 2 to 3% of the value of your roads every year in capital renewal. So we're actually recommending something a bit less, which is fine. Like your condition of your roads is very good right now. So you're in a different state of life cycle than perhaps other municipalities that might be older and maybe in the middle of that life cycle and might have to be spending 2% a year. Next slide, please. For risk, we basically look in the asset management plan. It's adding another layer to the condition profile. So if we think back to the 8% that I said was in orange and red, that's poor and very poor condition. What we do is look at adding in the consequence of failure, which is how important that asset is. So we use condition as the likelihood of failure component, and then we add in a 5-point scale for how important that asset is. It's essentially saying that you have 8% of assets in poor or very poor condition, but when you look at how critical those assets are, you have 0.7% in actual very high risk, because not all of those orange and red poor assets are actually critical. If you look at just the critical ones, those are the ones that are high risk, and those are the ones that kind of come up in the right-hand top part of this 5x5 risk map that we have here. There's about $7.8 million in there. So the very high-risk segments that we identified, or assets we identified, were about 2.5 kilometers of water main sewers and storm sewers, as well as $1.4 million of parks and rec assets, which consisted of some play structures, a skateboard park, and 53 meters of shoreline protection. Next slide, please. So the main outcomes really of the AM plan is looking at the funding gaps from the analysis. So when we talk about renewal, I had mentioned in the key outcomes that that's $4.3 million a year. Again, that's related to state of good repair and the condition of your existing assets. In terms of growth, so adding new assets to address, say, population needs, the gap is $1.2 million a year. Most of these growth projects are funded from development charges. So the gap here is really that the development charges aren't being it's expected that the contributions will be lower than actually needed for DC, basically possibly due to slower rate of development as well as the high rates of inflation that have occurred since the last DC study was done. And in terms of upgrades, there's a gap of $0.3 million a year. Similarly, for upgrades, a lot of the upgrade projects are also funded from development charges. So you can see the summary there of the growth, upgrade, and renewal gaps across the different asset areas. And you can see there the 1.3 million and the top row for renewal. That's what I had discussed for the roads and the PCI, and maintaining that at 70 PCI is that $1.3 million a year of extra funding that's required. Next slide, please. So yeah, managing the gap, this is kind of the final part of the asset management plan. And we kind of focus on the renewal gap here, but some of the recommendations are to consider, well, really the town is already doing this and should continue doing this. It's prioritizing the available funding that is available on projects that are critical. So it's looking at that risk assessment, deciding which projects are really critical for service provision and making sure that those projects are funded before the other less critical type assets. The town also does a good job on optimizing asset life and lowering life cycle costs. So looking at different strategies to make sure that the assets are maintained at a low cost of ownership. So we've incorporated some of those aspects, such as relining of sewers, into the forecast. That's a cheaper alternative than doing full replacement. And the relining adds another, say, 50 years of life to the pipes. From a funding perspective, it's continuing to identify external funding opportunities, for example, through other levels of government. And last year, there was a 1% net levy increase that was approved, and that was allocated for increased contributions to the asset management reserves. So that will likely need to continue to help manage this funding gap going forward. But as a note, this AM plan is not a financial plan in and of itself. And I'll discuss that on the next slide. So this is the last slide on what endorsement means today. Basically means that council is adopting their approach to managing the town's infrastructure as it's laid out in this asset management plan. But we're not recommending any specific rate changes or levy budget changes at this time. What we do recommend is that the recommendations on the gaps in this asset management plan be used to inform future budgeting processes, such as the annual budgeting process next year for operating and capital budgets. An endorsement today also recognizes that the town's AM policy has been reviewed and updated per Ontario regulation requirements. And a final next step, really on the tangible next step side, managing the funding gap, the town will be developing a financial plan led by the finance department that will provide the more detailed approach on how some of these funding gaps will be addressed from the funding perspective. And I think that's the last slide. Yep. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much for your presentation. Questions or?
Do we want to receive it and then move on to the report and ask questions?
All right, yeah, so why don't we receive this and then we'll answer questions after the report. So I need a mover and seconder to receive. Councillor DeFlavio, Councillor Vardy. Moved by Councillor DeFlavio, second by Councillor Vardy. Resolved that presentation from SLBC be received. All in favor? That's carried. Thank you very much for your presentation, and just stay for questions. Don't leave. All right. Now it's time for the staff report. Yeah, we need a mover and seconder for the staff report. Moved by Councillor Bradzi, second by Councillor Frake. Yeah, we're saving our questions for the end.
Well, right now.
Okay.
Some of them might be
All right.
answered in the staff report.
All right. So we're taking questions. All right. Yeah, questions?
I'm gonna wait, because the staff report might answer some of those.
We're on
Okay.
the staff department, so staff don't have an additional question.
Okay.
Through you, Mayor, sorry, I thought that there was a further report coming from staff. I didn't want to, I thought maybe some of those questions would be answered. Thanks for the presentation, Thomas. So like, I appreciate all the work that's gone into this, and when I look at it, I think it's important that we balance the long-term sustainability with short-term affordability. And, so when I saw the no recommendation for an increase to the levy, that made me happy temporarily. I mean, I'm sure that our budget department will come forward and bring forward changes to that. I think we've done a good job over the years staying on top of infrastructure, and I think the 91.2% good is an indication of that. And I want to make sure we're not unintentionally overcorrecting also when we're budgeting for the future. So my questions are, how does Grimsby compare to, how do our infrastructure conditions and renewal gap compare to other municipalities of similar sizes? I don't know if you have that answer, or if staff has that answer, if that's something that you haven't had a chance to look at yet. Like say in Niagara or other mid-sized municipalities in Ontario, how do we stack up? Because I read the news and I see Hamilton has, X number of $1 billion worth of gaps. Of course, it's a huge municipality, 10 times or more bigger than Grimsby. And I see Niagara is close to $3 billion in deficits, which will affect Grimsby taxpayers as well. So if you have any data or any information about how we compare to other municipalities, then I have a couple of other questions.
To you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, it's difficult to compare municipalities. You're looking for a similar municipality, I guess. But if you look at, say, the City of Hamilton report that just came out, it was, I had a colleague that looked into it, and it was about $10,000 per person, right? And I think when I looked at the gap for Grimsby, it was about $2,000 per person annually. This, when you look at the gap per person, to kind of rationalize it on a per capita basis. But again, City of Hamilton has the additional assets like water treatment and things like that. So I think in general, Grimsby is perhaps doing better than obviously the older municipalities because you have newer infrastructure. So I'd say it's in line with what I would have expected. Like you would not have as big a gap as the City of Hamilton per se. But yeah, I'd have to look into more of the recent asset management plans that have been published if I were to look directly at a comparison to Grimsby.
Thank you, through you, Mayor. Well, the reason I ask, and I didn't want to put you on the spot. I don't expect you to know. I thought maybe you might know. It's just to give us kind of a, how we stand, because it's asset management is relatively new, but this approach to asset management is brand new. So it would be nice to know how we compare to other municipalities. And I'm not expecting that of you, but perhaps from our staff in the future when we talk about budget, because it'll give us an idea of how seriously we need to take this. And, from a comparison perspective, I think that that's important. That being said, I have a couple of other questions. So there's an awful lot of subjectivity when it comes to, it seems like, and again, you can correct me if I'm wrong, it seems very subjective. So for example, the PCI, the Pavement Condition Index, 70 to 63 to me is meaningless. You know, when you say a PCI of 70 versus a PCI of 60, so how are we going to, as a council, say we're okay with 63 and we're not, or, you know, we're not okay with 55, but 75 is too much? Are we going to be given a sort of a, this is what that actually looks like? You know, when you get, a 63 looks like this, specifically on roads, or a 63 looks like that. And again, if that's too in the weeds, I apologize.
No, yeah, that's a good question. I mean, that's part of the reason why we kind of try to show the photos of what a PCI looks like, because it is hard to digest. I would look at it as if, you know, your average road is 63 versus average road is 70. That doesn't mean every road is in that condition. So when you have an average of 63, it means like you have a whole chunk perhaps that are below 40 or below 50, whereas at 70 you wouldn't have as big a chunk under. So using the average, I guess, yeah, is a bit difficult, but it does mean that you have a percentage, higher percentage in orange and red when you have your average at a much lower value. So that's kind of how we look at PCI. It's not just PCI in and of itself. The average means that, okay, individually you have a bunch more segments or length of roads that are in poor or very poor, with a PCI potentially at 50.
Through Mayor, so in this case, from a data perspective, would median be a better approach than average? Because, you know, so you could see outliers rather than, because the average might, if you've got some really good new roads that skew the average, for example, it might make it seem like things are better than they are. Or if you have some really bad roads, it might make things seem like they're worse than they are. Is average the accepted standard across the province? Is that always the way that things are done?
Yeah, through the mayor, I believe the Ontario regulation does say average, so it's mandated by the regulation to state the average pavement condition index. I don't think they use the median. When we do average, we do weight it by value. So like a bigger road with more lanes is weighted more than a single lane road that is, you know, a shorter segment. So that's taken into account into the average. It's weighted towards bigger roads that have more lanes. But again, I think the way to manage it is to look at both the PCI average as well as staff have the data on every single segment and which proportion is poor and very poor. So they would really manage it using both that information, like what % are in orange and red, as well as what percent, what average they're trying to maintain overall.
Sorry, I had a ton, but I'm just trying to learn, and I appreciate your responses. So the plan outlines $4.3 million renewal gap, but only 1% levy increase, which is $178,000, I think, a year, built into the 25 budget. So I don't know if this is a Tony question or like a staff question or a you question. I'm just looking at, and if this is going to come in the future, then I apologize for jumping the queue. What strategies we're looking at for financial planning to address the remaining shortfall? So if that's coming in the future, you mentioned that staff is going to come forward with, if that's coming in a future report, then you can disregard that question. And what's the anticipated long-term impact on the tax levy beyond the 1% that's already in place is a question that I have for staff. So again, if that's not a you question, I'm sorry for misdirecting it.
Yeah, through Ms. Mayor, yeah, I guess that is that is in the financial plan. That will be a future led by the finance department for a future date. So I'd have to leave that, I guess, to town staff to confirm. Thanks.
Councillor Barty.
Thank you. Just a curiosity, when we're calculating these figures, it's based on current cost today. Is there anything on the horizon in terms of new technology or whatever that would be much cheaper that might, that you know of, that might impact some of this so it won't be as much as what we're projecting right now?
Through the mayor. So there are some technologies that the town is looking at already. And I had mentioned, I guess, the relining of sewers, for example. So instead of full open cut replacement of a pipe, they're looking at just relining the existing pipe in place. That adds, you know, another 50 years to the pipe and therefore costs less and is a lower cost of ownership. So we're using data that we know as of today, and it doesn't really incorporate possible future technologies that we're not totally sure about yet. But we do try to incorporate whatever we can in terms of what staff are doing and looking at now for that forecasting.
So nothing that you know that's on the horizon that could impact this?
Yeah, nothing that's been directly incorporated yet. Yeah. So it could improve perhaps through technological advancements. Yeah.
Seeing no further questions, I do have one. With the provincial government coming forward with reduced development charges, which is to spur growth on, will that reduced development charges and spurred growth, will that accelerate our infrastructure gap?
So the growth gap that I mentioned of $1.2 million a year, I think it was, is directly related to the development charge funding sources. So the capital plan has projects obviously funded through development charges, but Finances has done their own projections on the actual contributions to those development charges, which is resulting in that $1.2 million a year cap. So I'm not sure exactly, I don't know if town staff wanted to comment on that, exactly how those contributions were determined in terms of how much that contributions were compared to the actual project costs in the capital plan, but that is, I believe they've already incorporated some of that reduction, and that's reflected in the gap that we've identified for growth.
I don't know, Tony, if you can add to that?
Yeah, going back to your original question, yeah, as you have new infrastructure, that will, in a way, increase the gap because now you have more assets to manage. So if you're not subsequently saving more for those future replacements, then your gap will continue to grow.
Thank you. Any further questions? Seeing none, moved by Councillor Bradsey, second by Councillor Frake. Resolved that report DPW 2512-2025 Asset Management Plan, AMP, and Policy Update dated June 16, 2025 be received, and that Council approve the 2025 Asset Management Plan and the updated Asset Management Policy in accordance with the requirements of Ontario Regulation 588-17. All in favor? And that's carried. Thank you very much for your presentation. All right, now we move to Chair's reports. Councillor DeFlavio, please give your Chair's report.
Thank you, Mayor. Through you, a few things that we dealt with on the May 28th Public Works Committee meeting. The Veterans Mural proposal was dealt with. Building on the earlier designation of Clark Street as Veterans Way and the banner program, staff recommended a Remembrance-themed mural on the south-facing wall of the Grimsby Museum near the cenotaph. The estimated cost is $15,000, but due to required foundation work for this year, the mural would be scheduled for completion in time for Remembrance Day of 2026. Some discussions around whether this falls under Public Works and Community Services happened, but we worked it out. There was a DWQMS, which is a drinking water quality management system review. Grimsby met all 17 service level indicators and 10 of the 12 operational targets. The system is working well overall. Unaccounted for water loss was a bit of a concern and was discussed by the committee at 9.27%. The target is 5%. While that is the target, it's still within industry norms. Staff is continuing the annual leak detection and meter calibration to try and figure out what's causing that. Water quality remains high, complaints are minimal, and mostly are related to chlorine taste from residents unfamiliar with the treatment process. The town plans to replace the remaining 2,200 old water meters with real-time reading meters by early 2026, which will improve accuracy in billing and hopefully give us some flexibility when it comes to billing. And a 25-year cast iron water main replacement strategy is underway as we deal with it every year. There's no safety issue with cast iron, but the corrosion increases, the likelihood of breaks, especially in the changing temperatures in the wintertime. So about $2 million per year is allocated. And as everybody knows, we've used grants in the past to accelerate the work when we could. We had a discussion about the Niagara Regional speed limit reductions and the 40 versus 50 kilometers per hour. And staff did a really good job of explaining why flashing signs couldn't be used because there's no guarantee that the flashing signs are functioning if it's a reduced speed during flashing signs. it's harder to enforce because if it says reduce during 40 to 40 kilometers per hour and then there's a camera there, there's no proof that you'd have to have proof that the sign was also working for the speed reduction, so it's a difficult thing to do. I'd still like really highly visible signs because the goal is not to ticket people, the goal is to reduce speeds, but I think our staff did an excellent job of explaining why it is the way it is. There was an asset management plan update, which I don't think I need to go into because we had a detailed report about it tonight. Some other notes were, I asked staff to communicate with our staff that are doing the tourism strategy. There are some synergies, I think, for lack of a better word, that we can find between our public works and economic development staff, because with the renewal of downtown, a lot of that is part of the discussion of the tourism strategy as well. So if we can all work together, if all those departments can come together and make it so that what we're doing in the downtown also works along with our tourism strategy, I think there's a lot of win-wins there. And the next meeting is July 30th at 6:30 p.m. Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor DeFlavio. Councillor Bradsey, you're up next with your Vice Chair report.
Thank you, Mayor Jordan. Through you, happy to fill in your absence. So we had two portions of our meeting. We had the first half of the public meeting, which is an official plan and zoning bylaw amendment for additional residential units. So additional residential units, or ARUs in Ontario, referred to secondary suites or additional living spaces within existing residential properties. These units can take various forms, including basement apartments, backyard suites, or converted garages. As we all know, the Ontario government is encouraging the creation of ARUs as a way to increase the housing supply and affordability, particularly in urban areas facing housing shortages. There was one delegate, but there was sufficient interest, I'd say, from members of the public in obtaining more information. I'd say the committee and staff both are seeking further clarification of how the province plans to roll this out, but I think there, all in all, is a lot of intrigue and an interest in seeing how this happens. Definitely a few clarifications, but if you have any, I'd refer to staff in the meantime. Second, we had a discussion report, a proposed zoning bylaw amendment at 556 to 564 Kemp Road East. The bylaw amendment stems solely between occupant uses for the Chamiso Winery once it is to be completed. The bylaw changed events to be hosted indoor only. And that is the only thing that is before you in the minutes tonight. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Bradsey. Councillor Sharwal, you're up with Rec. Thank you.
Through you, Mayor Jordan, thank you. So it's a fairly light agenda, so I will touch on each item briefly. We received a report from Janet Oakes, our museum manager curator. She highlighted the newest museum exhibit titled Grimsby, Our Story. It's currently running. We also had a report from our Director of Community Services, Sarah Sweeney, discussing the Community Project Grant Program Policy Update, which was approved by the committee. Last year, Community Services provided small grants to various local organizations and community groups for projects that would enhance the well-being of residents. The program will continue, but there are a few minor changes. Changes being that the max request be increased from $2,500 to $5,000, but the total budget will still remain the same. The dates of the program have been removed to allow for more flexibility, and revenues generated from grant requests must be reinvested in a purpose that aligns with the goals of the program. Third item was committee approved a recommendation for an extension of the Grimsby Farmers Market and related road closures for September 18th. This aligns with the International Plowing Match happening at the West Niagara Fairgrounds. And then we had an update from the Community Services Department on just some new items that came to town. The first being a new play structure that's been installed in Grimsby Beach. Walking path, benches, and other amenities to enhance the park's accessibility will be constructed in the coming months. We also had a new swing set installed in Ward 3's Morrison Park. A pathway connecting the existing trail to the swing and benches overlooking the lake will be added as well. Grimsby Beach stairs are scheduled for remediation in the coming months. Staff are currently seeking quotes from qualified contractors for their replacement, so We'll have a lot of very happy residents about that. Peach King Center refrigeration system replacement design. The town issued a request for proposal for engineering and design services for a new energy efficient refrigeration system at the PKC. The current system has exceeded its expected lifespan and requires replacement. So that's next up. Conservation Club building has been approved for demolition. Once demolition is complete, the site will be remediated with clean fill, topsoil and grass, transforming the area into a usable green space. Further design work for amenities at the site will be coming later. The town has been working to complete the Partners of Climate Protection 5 milestone framework. This comprehensive corporate action plan will guide the town in decreasing its carbon footprint and preparing the corporation for the effects of a changing climate. An RFP is being posted for this work. The PKC is progressing quickly and advancing well. Staff are coordinating with the construction manager with the phasing in of the parking lot to ensure parking and safe access remains available for Town Hall, the splash pad, and the outdoor rink. We're aiming to open and welcome the community in and around January 2026. The International Plowing Match, staff are actively working with the International Plowing Match team and neighboring municipalities this September. More details will come available. Some recent and upcoming events are Community Safety Day. The fire department and first responders were there and welcomed exceeded 1,000 people throughout the event, and the participant feedback was positive. Grimsby Seniors Club hosted their 60th anniversary party. That was also well attended. Grimsby Public Art Gallery celebrated its 50th anniversary. Saw 200 community members gathered for that event. We had it happening in the park last weekend. Music in the Park is back for Thursdays in July. Movie nights will be returning in August. And the community services staff are planning a Grimsby on the Lake event on Saturday, August 23rd at Casablanca Park Waterfront from 10 a.m. till 2 p.m. The event will highlight the trail and park with animation, activities, and live music and performances along the path. So lots happening in the Community Services Department, and our next meeting is scheduled for August 26, 2025. And that concludes my chair's report. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Charwa. Can I have a mover and seconder to approve the previous minutes? Moved by Councillor Charwa, second by Councillor Howe. Moved by Councillor Charwa, second by Councillor Howe. Resolved that the following minutes be approved. Council, May 26, 2025. Public Works Committee, May 28, 2025. Special Council, June 2nd, 2025. Special Council, June 3rd, 2025. Planning and Development Committee, June 11th, 2025. And Community Services Committee, June 12th, 2025. All in favor? That's carried. Can I have a mover and seconder to approve the council endorsement package from GDAC? Moved by Councillor Vardy, second by Councillor Howe. Moved by Councillor Vardy, second by Councillor Howe. Resolved that the council endorsement package from the Grimsby Economic Development Advisory Committee dated June 5th, 2025 be approved. All in favor? That's carried. Can I have a mover and seconder to receive the board minutes? Moved by Councillor Frake, second by Councillor Korstanji. Moved by Councillor Frake, second by Councillor Korstanji. Resolved that the following board minutes be received. Grimsby Public Library Board, May 14th, 2025. Grimsby Economic Development Advisory Committee, June 5th, 2025. All in favor? And that's carried. All right, now we move to announcements. I'd like to announce that June is a month of reflection, celebration, and learning. We proudly recognize Pride Month, Seniors Month, and National Indigenous History Month. Together, let us commit to building an inclusive, respectful, and equitable community for all. And just one other announcement. In the Age-Friendly Committee, along with the McNally House, we're meeting tomorrow morning at Centennial Park to open up the Wind Phone. And the Wind Phone is just something where people can, a number of other communities have it, where people who are have lost loved ones can go and actually sit under a willow tree by the creek at Centennial Park. And there's a really nice phone that was made by staff. It's really, really impressive. And it's just something that anyone who has lost someone can actually grieve. in a nice park setting and one with nature. And it's just something that, talking with McNally House and our age-friendly committee, it's something that we're really proud to put in at Centennial Park. So that's at 10 a.m. tomorrow, if anyone can be there. Oh, yes, and the CIO and myself, we were in Niagara Falls on Friday. Couldn't be at the happening in Niagara Falls, unfortunately, but it was Brock's 60th anniversary. So we were very happy to participate in the festivities there. Any other announcements? Councillor DeFlavio.
Thank you, Mayor. Through you, I attended on your behalf, the Community Living 60th anniversary on May 31st. It was a wonderful event held at Club Roma. They had fireworks. There was lots of familiar faces. 60 years of community living is incredible, and it's one of those things that we take for granted that that community living exists in the community and that and the services they provide. But sometimes it's important to stop and recognize the services they provide because we don't think about them. So these kinds of events, that these anniversaries, these big events like this, help remind us. And the other one, the CAO and I think you attended the Friday, and then we attended to give out the medals on the Sunday at the Paralympic event that occurred for goalball. I was very proud that the town of Grimsby sponsored that event. I'd never seen that live before. It was an incredible thing to see live. If anybody's not familiar with goalball, I recommend going and watching videos of it on YouTube. It's a sport for low vision, but when you look at it, you have to pick up the ball to understand, because it is a solid ball that they're throwing at each other that nobody should throw at each other. Like so it was pretty impressive to watch. And when you actually pick up that ball in real life and realize what they're throwing at each other, it really puts it into context for you and makes you realize that you don't want to be part of that sport and appreciate those who do. So I was proud to represent the town of Grimsby, Mayor, and those are both two really great events. Thank you.
Great, I appreciate that. Any further announcements? Councillor Vardy.
It's not really an announcement, but I just wanted to give kudos to the operations team because I really like the slow posts at Main and Nellis, and hopefully they could replace the speed cameras someday further down the road. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Councillor Sharwa.
Thank you, Mayor. Sorry, I just got in there in the last second. I just wanted to say thank you for everybody involved with the happening. It was another very successful event and lots of positive feedback from the community, so thank you.
Yes, I was able to be there on Saturday, and at the market. So it was, it was a packed night downtown, both nights. So the weather held out. All right, now we'll move to notice of motions. Councillor Frake, please read your notice of motion.
Thank you, Mayor Jordan. Excuse me, I have to read from my phone because my laptop is on the fritz. Whereas transit services are critical to building 21st century communities, and whereas the demand for transit is continuing to increase across Ontario, including Hamilton and the Niagara region, and whereas progressive transportation is vital to attract and or retain economic investment and the well-being of the community, and whereas despite borders separating communities, many residents travel between them for a variety of important activities, such as medical appointments, employment, education, and social events, and whereas many bordering municipal transit systems in Ontario have established connections between them, and whereas better connectivity by local transit is a factor in federal and provincial investments, therefore be it resolved that Grimsby Council requests that Niagara Transit Commission and Hamilton Street Railway work to create a connection between the two transit services. And Grimsby Council requests the Niagara Regional Council prioritize a connection between Niagara Transit and Hamilton Street Railway through their budget process. And Grimsby Council requests that the adopted Niagara Transit Master Plan incorporate a near-future connection to Hamilton Street Railway Transit, and that a copy of this resolution be sent to the Niagara Transit Board, Hamilton Street Railway Board of Directors, Niagara Region Council, Hamilton City Council, Town of Grimsby Council, and the Town of Lincoln. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Frank. Councillor Sharwa, please read your notice of motion.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Through Mayor, thank you. Whereas Councillor Brodsky has been late or absent from a significant number of council standing committee and advisory committee meetings in 2025, and whereas Councillor Brodsky failed to attend the 2025 Grimsby Civic Recognition Awards event in which he committed to being a presenter, and whereas Councillor Brodsky failed to attend a mandatory in-person training session as directed by Council via Resolution C-2514, and whereas Councillor Brodsky's potential absence from the 2025 FCM conference in which he asked the Town of Grimsby staff to register him for resulted in unrecoverable registration and hotel costs for the Town of Grimsby. Therefore, be it resolved, the council recommends the following actions. A, that Councillor Brodsky be immediately removed as chair and or vice chair for any and all council standing committees, advisory committees, and subcommittees for this term of council. That Councillor Brodsky be prohibited from assuming the role of deputy mayor during this term of council. That Councillor Brodsky submit a formal written apology addressing the following: a clear acknowledgement of the actions or behaviors that gave rise to concern, and a commitment to uphold standards expected of elected officials going forward, and that this apology be submitted to the clerk within 3 days of the adoption of this motion. And that the written apology be published in its entirety in the next upcoming agenda of council and in the agendas of all standing and advisory committees of which Councillor Brodsky is a member. I request, contingent on a 2/3 majority vote, that this notice of motion be given consideration at the June 16th, 2025 meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Sharwa. We have Councillor Sharwa as the mover. We need a seconder. Councillor Korstanji. Moved by Councillor Sharwa, second by Councillor Korstanji. Resolved that the rules of procedure be temporarily suspended by an affirmative vote of 2/3 to discuss Councillor Sharwa's notice of motion this evening. E-scribe vote for the 2/3. All right, that has been carried, so 2/3 has happened. Councillor Sharwa has moved and Councillor Korstanji has seconded the motion. The motion's been read, so discussion on the motion. Councillor Sharwa.
Thank you, through Mayor Jordan, thank you. So this motion is prompted by Councillor Brodsky's failure to attend the mandatory in-person special council meeting on June 2nd, 2025, as directed by council through Resolution C-2514. While occasional absences may be understandable, the repeated lates and absences demonstrated by Councillor Brodsky over the past several months have raised serious concerns about his commitment to his obligations as an elected official. This ongoing pattern suggests a disregard for the responsibilities he undertook when elected to serve the people of Grimsby. Outlined below are several instances of concerns regarding Councillor Brodsky's absences from March 18th, 2025 to June 4th, 2025, the date this motion was introduced. Lates and disruptions of council meetings. March 31st, 2025, council meeting late. April 14th, 2025, council meeting late. Absences from council and committee meetings. March 18th, 2025, fire committee meeting acting as chair, absent. April 9th, 2025, Planning Committee meeting acting as Vice Chair, absent. May 1st, 2025, GDAC Committee meeting acting as a member, absent. May 21st, Grimsby Green Advisory Committee meeting acting as a member, absent. May 21st, Planning Committee meeting acting as Vice Chair, absent. In addition to the absences just noted, there were several important events and meetings that Councillor Brodsky had committed to attending but ultimately failed to do so. On May 5th, 2025, the Civic Recognition Awards event, Councillor Brodsky had agreed to serve as a presenter of the significant event honoring the achievements of community members. His unnotified absence forced the CAO to step in, creating unnecessary stress on staff, diminishing the respect for the and diminishing their respect for the event. This is not just an administrative failure, but a complete disregard for the public duty he was entrusted with. June 3rd, 2025, Hydro AGM at the Casablanca Hotel. Councillor Bradzi arrived 24 minutes late for this important meeting and within minutes got up and left abruptly without any explanation or apology. His conduct undermined the professionalism expected of council members and jeopardized the efficient functioning of the meeting, which required a quorum to proceed. June 2nd, 2025, mandatory in-person training. The most concerning absence was his failure to attend the mandatory in-person training session on June 2nd, 2025, as directed by Council Resolution C-2514. This training was essential for all council members and it was non-negotiable. Councillor Bradzi's failure to attend represents a direct violation of Council's directives and signals a lack of commitment to his responsibilities. Despite his request for leadership roles within committees, Councillor Bradzi's repeated failure to meet the most basic expectations of attendance has disrupted council operations and compromised the credibility of the entire council. His consistent unreliability has not only diminished his own effectiveness, but has eroded public trust in council as a whole. Given the serious and ongoing nature of these failures, immediate action is required. This motion is a crucial step in ensuring that the integrity and professionalism of council is upheld and that Councillor Bradzi reflect on his past actions and recommit to his council responsibilities. I respectfully submit this motion for council's immediate consideration. Thank you.
Any further questions or comments? Councillor Bradzi?
Mayor Jordan, I could go on and addressing every single falsehood that was just stated there, but this is the kind of behavior that we as a council were supposed to eradicate this term. I honestly can't believe that we're actually tabling discussion in when the proper manner is to. I welcome an informal investigation, an IC investigation, whatever you choose. The irony of all this is the missed training that you claim that I missed was due to your failures and not mine. And the only reason I missed it because I was on the train coming home from FCM, which for some reason you've made up in your own mind that I did not attend. I'm not going to pay any more attention to this, Mayor Jordan, and I can't believe that you want to entertain this on your council table.
Any further questions? Councillor Vardy?
I'll wait till everyone's finished.
Councillor DeFlavio?
Thank you, Mayor. Through you. I'm concerned about this bypassing the proper channels. I don't want to politicize discipline, which unfortunately we've done in the past, it might be perceived that we've done in the past. I don't know I don't want to say that we have. Council's not a disciplinary tribunal. The Integrity Commissioner exists precisely to handle concerns like this at arm's length. I'm uncomfortable with even having this discussion here until we hear from the Integrity Commissioner. If that's why we have an Integrity Commissioner. I hate that we have to go to the Integrity Commissioner. Please don't misunderstand me. Like I would rather that people have a conversation about these things and work them out. But what I don't think we should be doing is having a debate about it here at council without the Integrity Commissioner's involvement. And that's all I have to say about it.
Just want to add to that, because we, council changed our procedural bylaw and allowed mediation to come forward before an IC complaint. I want to maintain confidentiality, but.
Point of order, I was never extended mediation.
Mediation and I don't want to break confidentiality, but that was the step with a number of councillors having an issue. So I'll just leave it at that. Councillor Vardy?
I'd like to call the question, please. You've had a chance once to speak.
Yeah, that's fine. The question's been called. E-scribe vote, please. No crosstalk, please. All right, that's defeated. Can I have a mover and seconder for the bylaws? Moved by Councillor Howe, second by Councillor Vardy. Moved by Councillor Howe, second by Councillor Vardy. Resolved that leave be given to introduce bylaw 25-31 and that same be read a first time, considered and passed. All in favor? That's carried. Next council meeting will be held on July 7th, 2025 at 5:30 p.m. Everyone have a good evening. We're moving into close now. Can I have a mover and seconder to meet in closed? Moved by Councillor Corstangi, second by Councillor Frake. Moved by Councillor Corstangi, second by Councillor Frake. Resolved that council meet in closed session under Section 2392F of the Municipal Act, where closed meeting is held to discuss advice that is subject to solicitor-client privilege, including communications necessary for that purpose, specifically regarding 133 to 137 Main Street East, and Section 2392K of the Municipal Act to discuss a position, plan, procedure, criteria, or instruction to be applied to any negotiations carried on or to be carried on by or on behalf of the municipality or local board, specifically regarding sole source procurement of water meters. All in favor to go into closed? That's carried. We'll just take a few minutes. If everyone can vacate the council chambers. So we'll take a 5-minute recess. Open session. Vardy, second by Councillor Howe. Moved by Councillor Vardy, second by Councillor Howe. Resolved that council proceed to open session. All in favor to move back? That's carried. We're now back into open. Just in a second. Can I have a mover and seconder for the closed session direction? Moved by Councillor Frake, second by Councillor Howe. Moved by Councillor Frake, second by Councillor Howe. Resolved that staff proceed as directed in closed session regarding 133 to 137 Main Street East property and the sole source procurement of water meters, and that council approve awarding non-competitive procurement with Neptune Technology Group to purchase and install approximately 2,100 water meters and related data collectors, gateways. All in favor? And that's carried. Can I have a mover and seconder for the confirming bylaw? Moved by Councillor Bradzi, second by Councillor Corstangi. Moved by Councillor Bradzi, second by Councillor Corstangi. Resolved that leave be given to introduce bylaw 25-32 and that same be read a first time, considered and passed. All in favor? That's carried. Meeting is adjourned. Good night, everyone. Thank you.